Hello and welcome to the big picture. One section of the society which fights for everyone's cause has always found itself helpless when it comes to its own cause. And those are the journalists. The Indian print media, which has depended on the periodic recommendations of the wage boards over the years for increase in their salaries and perks, have been waiting now for 8 years. The last wage board was set up in 2007 and the final report was submitted in 2010. The government took almost one more year to approve the recommendations in 2011. However, as several of the media managements challenged the decision and went to the courts, the issue got stuck for another 3 years. Finally, in February 2014, the Supreme Court upheld the validity of the Majitiya Wage Board and directed the newspapers and news agency managements to pay wages as per its recommendations. However, now even after a year of the Supreme Court order, many managements have stalled payments or some have only implemented it partly. The managements have used all kinds of tricks to deny or deprive the journalists and non-journalists their rightful wages and the new pay structure. Why and how has this sad state of affairs prevailed? And will the wage board recommendations see the light of the day as thousands of journalists across the country wait for it? We will discuss all this today with Harivansh, Editor-in-Chief of Prabhat Khabar and JDU MP in the Rajya Sabha, Colin Gonsalves, Senior Advocate in the Supreme Court. He has been appearing for the journalists in the courts, S.K. Pandey, President of the Delhi Union of Journalists. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Harivansh, how do you look at this problem? Why do you think that this has been going on and on and on, and why is it that journalists have not found justice?
मैं स्पष्ट कर दूं शुरू में कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट के डिसीजन के बाद इस पर बहुत बहस नहीं होनी चाहिए, उसको इंप्लीमेंट होना चाहिए क्योंकि वो लॉ ऑफ द लैंड है और सुप्रीम बॉडी है हमारी।
1 साल हो गया लेकिन अभी तक इंप्लीमेंट नहीं हुआ।
तो उनकी वजह में हमें तलाश करनी चाहिए कि वजहें क्या हैं। मैंने अपना करियर बड़े संस्थानों से शुरू किया, कलकत्ता और बंबई में काम किया, टाइम्स घराने, एबीपी में। इसके बाद बहुत एक छोटे अखबार में भी लंबे समय तक काम करने का मुझे अनुभव रहा। जब इस प्रॉब्लम को हम सबने देखना शुरू किया तो इसमें मुझे लगता है कि पुनः सुप्रीम कोर्ट में डिफेमेशन कई ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ने और जर्नलिस्ट ने फाइल किया है। नंबर 1, राज्यसभा में डिफेमेशन कंटेम्प्ट फाइल किया है।
बिल्कुल सही
कि अभी तक इस पर कोई इंप्लीमेंटेशन नहीं हुआ। राज्यसभा में जिन लोगों ने इस मामले को उठाया उनमें मैं भी था, पर मैंने कुछ सुझाव भी साथ में दिए हैं और आप मौजूद हैं उन चीजों पर बहुत बेहतर तरीके से सामने चीजों को रख सकते हैं। लेकिन मेरी जानकारी में सिर्फ हिंदू ने इसको लागू किया और हिंदू ने अपने बैलेंस शीट में अप्रॉक्सीमेटली 65 और 66 करोड़ लॉस इनकर किया है। बाकी किसी और संस्थान ने इसको लागू नहीं किया।
ये भी थोड़े गलत है। हिंदू ने 65-70% इंप्लीमेंट करा, बाकी वेरिएबल डीए में कुछ गड़बड़ी
संभव
पांडे जी, you let him finish.
संभव है। तो मेरी जानकारी में हिंदू ने इंप्लीमेंट किया है, बाकी लोगों के मामले कोर्ट में है, कोर्ट डिसीजन देने वाला है। छोटे अखबार के अनुभव की दृष्टि से मैं आपको बता रहा हूं कि जिस तरह से हालात हैं उसमें अगर मजीठिया को टोटल इंप्लीमेंट आप कर दें तो लगभग 25 से 66% वेज भी लोहा बढ़ रहा है और इतना टर्नओवर में इतने विज्ञापन उनकी आमद नहीं है कि उसको एब्जॉर्ब कर सके। छोटे अखबारों की बात मैं कह रहा हूं, लेट अस बी वेरी क्लियर। तो मेरा सुझाव था पार्लियामेंट में कि सरकार इसकी छोटे अखबारों के संदर्भ में जांच कर ले, क्योंकि सुप्रीम कोर्ट का फैसला है, इसको लागू होना ही चाहिए। और जो अखबार नहीं पे कर सकते या जिन अखबारों का सिर्फ एक अखबार निकालना ही काम है और जिनका मुकाबला बहुत बड़े अखबारों से है, जिनके पास और कई तरह की चीजें हैं जिनसे उनके आमद के स्रोत हैं, तो सरकार डीएवीपी के विज्ञापन में पहले से भी नहीं रही है कि छोटे छोटे अखबारों को मदद दे और वो उस आमद से इसको इंप्लीमेंट करें। तो मुझे लगता है कि एक तो बड़े अखबारों की समस्या अलग है, उसको अलग ढंग से देखा जाना चाहिए। बहुत सारे छोटे अखबार हैं जिनको ये लागू करने में ये प्रैक्टिकल डिफिकल्टी भी है, जिसका अनुभव मुझे थोड़ा है।
ओके, हरिवंश जी, I have heard this kind of arguments for the last 30 years whenever the wage board have been implemented, but I have not seen, and ultimately Newspaper managements have had to implement the recommendations at some point of time, despite the delays, which has happened all the time in the past. But I have not seen any newspaper shutting down because of implementing the wage boards so far. Colin, what is the problem?
Yeah.
What is the problem now?
Well, really the problem is that the big newspapers have taken a collective decision to sabotage the Majitya Wage Board Award. And they've taken a conscious decision to disregard the Supreme Court order. It's very strategic planning and thinking. And they've done it in 100 different ways. So the journalists are very confused as to how to go ahead. But there is large-scale sabotage and very poor implementation. And I must say, even in Hindu, I was told just the other day that the management has taken undertakings from hundreds of workers saying they don't want the Majitya Wage Board Award, and they are happy to do something which the Hindu management will give them, etc.
And this is not only with the Hindu, it's with the several groups of newspapers.
Thousands of workers, thousands of journalists, thousands of employees have been forced to sign under threat of transfer, termination, victimization, sign undertakings that they don't want to get the wage board, which they fought for 8 years. Is it believable? Fighting for 8, 10 years, 12 years. And now they say, no, we are happy with our old wages. It's a shocking case of contempt of court. But that is half the picture. The other half is those federations and trade unions that were leading the struggle in the Supreme Court. We won not because of the lawyers. We won because of the federations and the unions. They provided all the information. They made it possible to argue. Those are today, for some reason, you must ask, mysteriously silent. So the leaders have gone to the back. They are now surrendering and running away from the battle when it comes to implement. What is the point in getting an award if you can't implement? So the great champions that were leading the battle are now abandoning the battle. So the journalists are left to themselves. Who will lead them? Who will fight? Who will come to court? I'm doing this contempt of court matters, and I can tell you, it's in a pathetic state. We were prepared in the first round. Look at the preparation now, miserable. You try and do meetings, nobody's coming.
This is something which which has not been known to a lot of people. Mr. Pandey, you have to explain what Colin is saying.
Number one, I do not agree with Colin Gonsalves in painting all unions with the same brush. It is a matter of fact. It is a matter of record that it was a unity.
No, which he said.
No. I can't. Please allow me to carry on because all of them spoke. I want to make position very clear. I think it is a very sinister, a deep motive behind it, and the motive is a proprietorial motive, all getting together, lumping together to finish the Working Journalist Act. Once the Working Journalist Act ends, there will be no boards, no awards, no statutory of security of service, and journalism. I think it is a battle for safe journalism now, even if it be a back to the wall fight. Number one. Number two, I really think that even managements, as Colin rightly pointed out there, even the Hindu, which had a record so far of even announcing interim relief and everything much beforehand, there have been a dialogue. The INS, the press barons, were disunited vis-a-vis earlier. At least Hindu group and some other groups used to ultimately side with the workers. There has been a division this time, and this division, it is behind the scene division of whom? One is open, the other is not so open. The plea is being made surreptitiously to say we are going to offer better than the wage boards and take it. Even now there is resistance. I will not say the battle is on.
Battle is on or battle is over?
The battle is not over yet.
Okay.
Because all of them are that is why he fought the case. It is contempt of the apex Supreme Court order.
Mr. Pandeyji, my question is this. What Colin says that, after the award has come, in the last few months, he is experiencing the unions abandoning their cause, the unions abandoning their fight. how do you react to that? Why is it happening if it's happening?
You see, this is partly it happens after all wage boards. An attempt is made to give and take in the case of some unions. It also happens, there is another side of the picture, to the best of my limited knowledge, right in the capital of India, that is Delhi, one union office has been suddenly sealed. And the office bearers, the elected office bearers, I would not like to mention the personalities, even the elected office bearers cannot go to the union office. There's a reign of terror. And when it's a situation, I had said before the wage board also, an emergency type situation exists for journalists and non-journalists. And there's a misnomer. Even in the heading today, it's not wage board for journalists, it's wage board for journalists and press workers. Yes. And there's an attempt to divide the two of them, and that attempt is partly succeeding in some areas. That is what Collins is referring to. But it is a wage board for journalists and press workers.
Yes, that is true.
And they are fighting. And there are about 10, 15 defamation cases already.
The caption represents both journalists and non-journalists because of lack of space. We have to say only journalists. Anyway,
that also.
Harivansh, the problem apparently, I'm sure Colin will also talk about it. The problem apparently is about in the Hindi media industry, in which you know very well, there is a huge problem. There's huge problems there. The biggest media groups are not implementing the wage board. They are using all kinds of tricks. One of the tricks, I'm told, is asking the journalists to sign a paper saying that they are working for the .com, for the internet edition of the paper. And so, since the wage board does not include the internet, they are coming out. They seem to be out of the wage board recommendations. And many other tricks are being used. How do you explain this?
दो चीजें मुझे कहने की इजाजत दें. पहली चीज जो हमारे दोनों साथ के वरिष्ठ मित्रों ने बताया, यूनियंस की रुचि क्यों थोड़ा कम दिखाई देती है. सिर्फ ये जर्नलिस्टों के यूनियन के बारे में नहीं देखना चाहिए. 1991 ऑनवर्ड्स जब नई इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी आई, उसके बाद से देखें हर जगह ट्रेड यूनियंस का वो स्वरूप नहीं रहा जो अपने अधिकारों के लिए बिल्कुल लास्ट पॉइंट तक लड़ते थे. वो जर्नलिस्टों पर भी असर पड़ा है. ये हमारे इकोनॉमी के चेंज का असर समाज के डिफरेंट सेगमेंट पर जो पड़ा वो हमारे ऊपर भी पड़ा. दूसरा, यह वेज बोर्ड बाकी पहले के वेज बोर्ड से बिल्कुल अलग है. ये बिल्कुल उनसे बहुत बेहतर और कई चीजों में मैंने मार्क्ड इंप्रूवमेंट है. ये बिल्कुल क्लियर हमें रहना चाहिए. तीसरा, जो हिंदी मीडिया का आपने पूछा, तो मैं उसको जोड़ना चाहूंगा कि हिंदी मीडिया में पिछले 20 वर्षों में खासतौर से उदारीकरण के बाद क्या बदलाव आया.
बहुत बदलाव.
आपने सही उल्लेख किया मेरी बात के बाद कि कोई अखबार वेज बोर्ड देने से बंद नहीं हुआ पिछले कुछ वर्षों में. हाँ, सही आपने कहा. पर याद रखिए कि पिछले 20 वर्षों में आई कैन टेक डजन्स ऑफ नेम जो अखबार सबसे पावरफुल थे, सबसे अधिक सर्कुलेटेड थे, आज उनका एग्जिस्टेंस भर रह गया है. वो सिर्फ सिंबॉलिक रह गए हैं. हिंदी इलाकों में
that has nothing to do with the wage problem. It may have to do with the way they are running the newspapers.
No, sir.
No. And
let me put. There are some practical things, sir. आज हुआ क्या है हिंदी में कि 3-4 बड़े अखबार जिनके पास विदेशी पूंजी है, शेयर बाजार की पूंजी है और बाकी तरह के उनके आय के साधन, बड़े घराने हैं, मोनोपोलिस्टिक सिचुएशन उनकी है. वो एक राज्य से दूसरे राज्य में जाते हैं, अखबार खोलते हैं और मुफ्त में अखबार बेचते हैं. बल्कि कहूं पाठकों को पढ़ने के लिए अखबार का इंसेंटिव देकर अखबार बेचते हैं. जो छोटे अखबार जिनकी सिर्फ अखबार से आमद होने वाली है, उनके सामने ठहर नहीं पाते और बंद हो जाते हैं. आप कहेंगे मैनेजमेंट का प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि कैपिटल इन्फ्यूज नहीं कर पाते. तो मेरी प्रॉब्लम, लेट मी कंप्लीट सर. तो हिंदी में भी दो तरह से चीजों को देखना चाहिए. पूरे हिंदुस्तान में अंग्रेजी हुई या हिंदी या बाकी और रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस, कुछ बहुत बड़े घराने हो गए जिनके पास मोनोपोलिस्टिक सिचुएशन है, कैपिटल है, डाइवर्सिफिकेशन ऑफ थिंग्स है, यानी वो टीवी में भी है, बाकी चीजों में भी है. जो
क्रॉस मीडिया
जो छोटे अखबार हैं उनकी स्थिति बिल्कुल भिन्न है. फिर भी मैं कहता हूं कि छोटे अखबारों को सरकार हेल्प देकर इस मजीठिया वेज बोर्ड को लागू कराना चाहिए. इससे जर्नलिज्म
it is not just, Colin, it's not just you please give me, clarify this. Is it a problem Is this problem you see only in the, is there a difference in the problem between the English media and the regional language media?
See,
In the way they are approaching this issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm really a good expert on this, but what we saw in the Supreme Court was that the Hindi media has huge potential for expansion because we produced all those documents.
Yes.
And unlike English media where they expected a huge crisis to take place, that crisis didn't take place.
That also has not happened.
Didn't take place. They became some of the world's biggest, corporations.
Newspaper groups.
And the Hindi showed a huge, for the next 5-10 years, it shows a huge expansion.
Right.
So I don't believe that any of these corporations or these newspapers are bankrupt. I believe what they are doing is twofold. They are getting into real estate business on a big way. So they're buying up property everywhere with the help of governments who are anxious to please them. And secondly, they are diverting funds to digital media and so on. And they are deliberately
one
showing...
second, Colin, I just want to put this on record. This is a study done by, this is a study done by the FICCI, in fact. FICCI is a media study, annually they come out with, and the long-term growth prospects of I'm talking of the Hindi market in print media, shows that, by 2016, they're expected to grow by 10.8%. Though English market is expected to grow by 4.8%. But the size of the English market is obviously at least 3-4 times bigger than the Hindi market, which means that actually nobody is occurring any losses.
Yes, and Times also has a survey like this. So when they argued in court that our papers are going to become bankrupt and close down and so on, we showed them their own survey anticipating huge, increases in circulation and revenue and so on and so forth. So the newspaper, whether Hindi or English or Indian language newspapers, are very robust and they're doing exceedingly well and there's absolutely no reason why they should not implement Majitya.
But Colin, the kind of tricks which these people are employing, for one example which I gave you about how they are being shifted to or being made to sign that they work for the .com, the internet edition and not the, these kind of things, is there no way in which legally these can be tackled? Because the young journalists who are facing these problems in this country have no clue how to tackle this kind of situation.
See, there is a way in law. There's a very clear way in law. Unfortunately, I think a large section of journalists, this is very surprising given their high-profile nature of their work, a large section of journalists are actually unorganized.
Yes.
They're just there in the field and they're exploited brutally. One is you mentioned showing them as working in digital media.
Or the threat of transfers or threat of...
We have so many cases of transfers of persons and so on. So many cases of transfers where a person is immediately told the moment he comes forward with a group of employees and tells the employer, listen, we want it to be implemented, Majitya to be implemented, the very next day the employer tells him, you decide, you want to continue, you continue with this demand. Otherwise, we are sending you up to Guwahati or some other place.
Yes, Pandit ji.
You see, this problem
Before that, I think he wanted to
जी मैं आपका
quickly.
जी आपका फिगर मैं वो करना चाहता था जो फिकी का आपने फिगर दिया ग्रुप एम बहुत ही नोन ग्रुप है जो अध्ययन करता है कि क्या एडवर्टाइजमेंट के प्रॉस्पेक्ट है मीडिया इंडस्ट्री के लिए उसमें मैं आपको बताऊं इस साल के लिए उनके अनुमान के अनुसार 12.6% टोटल एड रेवेन्यू में इजाफा होने वाला है लगभग 49,000 समथिंग करोड़ टोटल वॉल्यूम होगा उसमें हिंदी प्रिंट मीडिया या प्रिंट का सिर्फ 5% हिस्सा है लास्ट ईयर उन्होंने लास्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर में प्रेडिक्ट किया था कि ये ग्रोथ 2014-15 के लिए 7.6% होगा जो 5.2% रहा है और कई हिंदी अखबारों के छोटे अखबारों के अगर आप
छोटे अखबारों के बारे में आई fully agree with you. The problem is also
problem, sir. I would like to
fully agree with the
problems.
The problem is with the monopolist groups which you are talking about, the big newspaper
groups. So we
groups.
must differentiate that.
No, absolutely. The differentiation has been made. We are now joined in by Ajay Upadhyay, General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India. Welcome, Ajay. Ajay, we are, before you came, we were discussing the problems of why wage board is not being implemented. Several things have been said here. Why do you think, in your point of view, how do you think the managements have got away, even 1 year after the Supreme Court has said that these recommendations need to be implemented?
See, right now the situation is that there are cases and there are contempt cases which are going on in the Supreme Court. So saying about anything which goes against...
So we have Colin Gonsalves here who has explained to us the legal problems. I want you tell the practical situation as far as journalists are concerned and non-journalists.
Right. See, there are two things, Girish. One is that wage board is not a new thing. Wage board is historically there. After independence, it was constituted so that journalists cannot be exploited by any means. Now, when you come to this situation, and when the newspaper management knows that this is the system under which they have to work, I think everybody must follow that. If they do not follow that, then there is some kind of a violation. What kind of a violation is to be examined? I think it is already being examined by the court, and the right steps are being taken. I only want to say that if a group thinks that they can be in a newspaper business, that this business has got certain bindings. One of the bindings is the wage commission. So wage board commission is something which is there very much for them.
And they have to follow it.
INS, out of everything else, it was the INS which went to the court.
Yes.
So I think the basic, if at all there was some understanding between the journalists and the management, that was broken because the INS went to the Supreme Court and asked for some relief. In turn, Supreme Court saw some other views and decided to go in favor of Majeetiya recommendation.
So all those questions which had been raised by the newspaper managements as far as whether this kind of a wage board can be set up at all those things have been settled now with the Supreme Court.
As a newspaper house, I think nobody can, if any other organization says, I think that can be understood. But newspaper management knows pretty well what a wage board is, what a wage board commission is, and it has voice. It can always, INS as a body can meet and carry press releases, and I doubt whether those press releases would not be carried by any newspaper.
Yes.
So if they had to say all this, they had to say it in the beginning rather than now.
Absolutely. The sad part is that the press releases of the unions don't get published in the newspapers nowadays. Yes, Mr. Pandey.
Some of the missing points I would like to elaborate, which one point you raised very aptly. There is a de facto censorship of all union news. All this newspaper union news, 90% of the news about struggles is not carried. It is about the general labor situation, but it is specifically true even in the media, number one. Number two, even in the media, to the best of my very limited information, there is a secret code of conduct. I repeat, at least in one newspaper, there is a code of conduct saying that news about unions, about associations, etc., have to be cleared by XYZ brand equity manager. In fact, this issue went to the press council for some time also, but then it was given go by. Number three, as far as the unions are concerned, a multiplicity of unions seem to be cropping up, and with the multiplicity of unions, another thing is happening. There seem to be a multiplicity of lawyers giving a variety of advices to unions at the behest, perhaps, of the managements to ensure that this case does not go to its logical course, where the apex court judgment has been totally violated. It is contempt, and the wage board should be retained lock, stock and barrel. Second point he made was a very good point about Hindi and English. There is a tendency vis-a-vis the small newspapers, Hindi is treated, given stepmotherly treatment, even in advertisements and other things. That is absolutely true. And we should be Hindu ke Rakshak, not Hindu ke Mahant. And as Rakshaks, I would say this is a bad tendency, but I repeat, papers which never ever implemented the award, and they happen to belong to monopoly groups like Jagran.
Yes.
I'll mention.
Yes, Dainik Jagran, Dainik Bhaskar, Times of India, all these people.
To say, they employees who are on contract.
Yes.
70% reality, the government, by ensuring non-implementation of earlier wage boards, has ensured that 70% employees are on contract. They are being bulldozed to sign. Now they got hope. There was an agitation. To the best of my limited knowledge, last week in Noida, there was a strike in Jagran.
Right.
It has never happened before.
Yes.
They were being forced to sign. They don't want the wage board. What is going on?
You are the editor-in-chief of a very important newspaper in Bihar and Jharkhand. Has your newspaper implemented the award?
इनफैक्ट हम लोग वेट कर रहे हैं, हमारी अभी पेइंग जो कैपेसिटी लोगों ने कैलकुलेट की है कि कोर्ट में जो मामला चला है डिसीजन आ जाए, उसके बाद जैसा डिसीजन होगा करेंगे।
Colin?
I'm surprised because the decision is of February last year.
Exactly.
सही सही आप कह रहे हैं।
So
यस सर।
it was to be, and the arrears were to be paid by February this year. Now, none of the big newspapers have actually paid arrears in accordance with the Supreme Court. And it's only when the matter came before the Supreme Court a few days ago that 2 days before the case, they started giving some checks. And we look at the checks, you're supposed to get lakhs of rupees and you're getting some thousands of rupees.
No, in fact,
Oh,
just today, I heard from some newspaper employees or former employees that, you know, when they asked what about arrears, they said you will get no arrears. In fact, you have to give us money. This is what
That's
was told
right.
today.
In
I
Indian
heard
Express, in Indian Express, I must tell you.
In Deccan Herald, people
Yeah.
are being told that they have to return money. They are not getting any.
In Indian Express, it's so shameless that the company, in fact, has given them letters saying, you want wage increase, you want Majitya? Here, we're giving you the calculation. And the calculation will show your basic will be negative. So arrears means what? Arrears means we will recover from the employee the arrears from the employee and take it back.
मैं एक चीज ऐड करना चाहूंगा, सिंस आपने हमारे अखबार के बारे में पूछा, मैं इंडिविजुअल डिस्कशन नहीं करना चाहता था। हम बड़े एक छोटे अखबार से शुरू किए, एक एडिशन से 400 कॉपी उसकी बिकती थी।
नहीं पता है।
लेट मी ऐड सर, अपने एग्जिस्टेंस के लिए जब बड़े अखबार आ गए, ट्रेडिशनल वहां के सारे छोटे और पावरफुल अखबार, लोकल अखबार खत्म हो गए, जब बड़े अखबार बाहर से आ गए जिनके मल्टी एडिशंस थे, तो हमको एक्सपेंड करना पड़ा बैंक से लोन लेकर। और लास्ट 2 फाइनेंशियल ईयर्स में 40-50 करोड़ से ज्यादा लॉस इनकर किया हुआ। इसलिए दे हैड टू प्लान कि कोर्ट का डिसीजन जो भी आएगा हमें करना पड़ेगा।
Ajay, what is the solution according to you? You know, because a lot of journalists, people, I'm sure you know, I know, you know, all of us have known journalists who are now fighting these battles. Is there any hope for them? How do they get it? Unionizing doesn't seem to be a solution because
I don't think
they are immediately sacked or transferred or, you know, threatened.
Girish, see, we need to look at it in a very positive manner. What is the solution? The solution is that everybody should sit together, because see, you know, when we say that somebody came on contract, somebody came on wage board, when you join a newspaper, you are a journalist, you know very well what you are signing at and what you are not signing at. If you have entered into an agreement, then you are bound by that agreement. So whether you are covered by wage board and the wage board conditions, or you sign an agreement and join there, and if a part of them join on agreement and part of them join on a wage board conditions, they are two dissimilar conditions. But coming back to that, you know, there must be an amicable solution, because I can tell you, Girish, at the end of every agitation, it is the journalist who suffers and their families who suffer.
Absolutely.
We must act in the interest of those journalists and their families, and we must make sure that nobody loses the job, nobody is harassed.
Absolutely.
And their protection, and therefore I think an amicable solution should be sought, rather than either way solution.
You know, the question is this, Mr. Pandey. Yeah. You know, what do you expect the government to do? Colin, you think the government has any role in this? Yes, Mr. Pandey, you first end.
I would sum up my arguments and
quickly
come to your point
running
quickly,
out of time.
That we are not at the end of the tunnel if there is some action. Number one, the Working Journalist Act, there says Section 17B, the government can immediately send inspectors to all the newspaper establishments to find out what is the state of implementation.
Okay.
Number one, that is just a small point.
Number
two, there has to be a united fight by journalists and press workers for the contract laborers and for contract journalists also, and the journalists on wage board also. That has to be combined with the workers.
Apart from what my friend Mr. Pandey says,
with the workers.
that the Act provides for the Labour Commissioner to go and take inspection and make reports.
Has it ever been done?
I think Karnataka has issued a notification, but it's not yet done. And I'm apprehensive also about what these Labour Commissioners will do. They will go and have chai with the management.
Mr. Harivansh, very quickly, last
will come out.
I want to say one last thing, if you don't mind. I would urge journalists to come together and unionize more. When unions come under attack, the answer is not to unionize less, but to unionize more.
I think, sorry,
Thank you.
Mr. Harivansh, it's completely run out of time. But this is a discussion which you will not see on other television channels or newspaper. As we said, there is as Mr. Pandey said, there is a secret code to shut information on this. But hopefully this kind of discussion here will wake up the government and to ensure that the journalists get their right what has been given to them by the wage board. We'll wait and watch what will happen.
Let there be a media commission to look into this entire process.
Okay, thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, the big picture.